أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فأتت به قومها تحمله قالوا يا مريم لقد جئت شيئا فريا يا أخت هارون ما كان أبوك امرأ سوء وما كانت أمك بغيا فأشارت إليه قالوا كيف نكلم من كان في المهد صبيا صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. I bear witness that without Allah there is no God. I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the last, the final messenger of Allah, after whom no prophet old or new will come. And I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. The two verses of the Quran that I recited in Arabic are taken from chapter 19, and I translate them as follows. She came with him to her community, transporting him. They remarked, "O Mary, you are really here with something unique. Sister of Aaron, your father was not a troublesome person, nor was your mother immodest." She directed them to him. They uttered, "How can we converse with one who is still a youth in a crib?" Now, within the last 150 years or 175 years, there has been a lot of research into different scriptures, the scriptures of the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Zoroastrians, and even other unknown religions or smaller religions, and especially Islam as well. European researchers have not only studied the languages and translated some of these scriptures, they have tried to tie in the historical information provided by these scriptures with science and with archaeology. And for the last 50 years or so, with the exception perhaps of certain parts of the Bible, most of the research that is being done is not focused so much on the other religions as on the religion of Islam and the Holy Quran. The Holy Quran especially is being looked at by so many new researchers in the Western world, and they are looking at it from a critical point of view. They are looking at the Quran to find some fault in it. There have been many interpretations. For example, the question is whether the Quran is intact today as it was in the time of the Prophet Muhammad. They admit that it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, but some people think that it was only 80%, other things were added afterwards. There are some who think that Makkah never existed, even in the time of the Prophet Muhammad. And within the last month or two or so, another research came out which says that actually the black stone is really not in Makkah, but is in Jerusalem, below the Dome of the Rock. And they have come up with many fantastic ideas, in a sense to try to discredit the authenticity and the correctness of the Quran, and the fact that it is not a divine scripture. Now, many Muslims are unaware of this kind of research because they are focused these days on the issue in Palestine, the problems that you have within the Muslim community all over the world, politics in their own country, and so many things. And of course, a sort of devotion to trying to interpret Islam in the light of the Hadith rather than the Quran. So the Quran is a book that is not being paid much attention to by even Muslims. And it is really the Ahmadiyya movement which has not only done research and can answer all of these questions, but the Ahmadiyya movement, especially the lower Ahmadiyya movement, have people today who can interpret the Quran and show the falsehood of the approach of these people who are trying to discredit the Quran as a work of God. Now, it must be clearly understood that the Quran is not like other scriptures. It is not a historical record. It has revealed on different occasions, for different circumstances, and for other circumstances as well in the future. But it has also been rearranged in a way which is necessary for its understanding and its application, to put it into practice. So you don't find in the Quran the historical records starting from Adam and going down to the various prophets, Abraham and Noah and all of these other prophets up to Jesus Christ and even perhaps later on. You don't find it that way. You find that the Quran has a message, and it does not give us history. It gives us the lessons of history, what we can learn from history. And that is why it is so important for us to approach the Quran from a different perspective, a different point of view, a different approach. And it is necessary, therefore, to read the Quran and look carefully at the words, even in the English language, because yes, there may be things in the Arabic language that people may not recognize, may not realize, because some words are different but are translated the same. But there are some cases where you find that the words are clearly different, and people just don't pay attention to it because they have preconceived ideas. They already have their mind made up on a certain incident or story or event or concept or idea, and therefore they translate what they already know into understanding the Quran. To give a few examples, let us look at the story of Abraham and the sacrifice of Ishmael. Now, it is said that Abraham saw in a dream, and later on when he attempted to sacrifice his son, he was stopped, and it said, "Oh Abraham, you have fulfilled the vision." But there are two words used here. One is dream and one is vision in English. In Arabic, they are definitely different words. The word for dream is the word manam, which comes from the Arabic word naum, that means sleep. And therefore a dream is that which, a vision that you see while you are asleep. The word for vision, however, is used when Abraham was said, "You fulfill the vision," refers more to a prophecy, and it is a vision while you are awake, not while you are asleep, in a state of relationship with Allah, where Allah discloses certain things to the particular individual. So what was the difference between the vision and the dream? Abraham saw that he was actually sacrificing a son. There are some Muslims who doubt that. They say, no, he saw in one dream that he was sacrificing that which he loved, and he sacrificed animals, and then that didn't seem to satisfy God, so he went on sacrificing more until eventually the only son he had at that time, Ishmael, he decided maybe this is what Allah needed, and that is when he went to sacrifice Ishmael. The Quran does not say so. Abraham went to his son and he said, "Oh my son, I have seen in a dream that I should sacrifice you." It was quite specific. And instead of running away, Ishmael said, "Oh my father, do as you are commanded." In other words, he was prepared to be sacrificed. But Abraham never sacrificed, so never took the life of his son. How could he therefore have fulfilled the vision? Quite simply because the vision was something else. What was the vision? That is mentioned elsewhere in the Quran, which will require another sermon. But basically, Abraham had prayed to Allah that there should be leadership or imamat. He was raised as an imam, the Quran says, and imamat should be among his offspring. And that was his prayer. And so Allah said, "I will allow you imams leadership to be among your offspring, but not those who are cruel." And what the vision really was, as you go through the different trials and the story of Abraham in different places of the Quran, basically it is this, that Abraham is being told that, look, when you set up someone for leadership, religious leadership, leadership in the way of Allah, it's as if you're taking their life, you're sacrificing them. And we have seen that in the descendants of Abraham. Almost every prophet, the Quran says, they had enemies. They tried to murder them, they tried to kill them. We see of the case of John the Baptist, where attempt was made on his life. We see in the case of Jesus Christ, where he was put on the cross, on a stake to be crucified. And we see in the case of the Prophet Muhammad how they wanted to murder him. So in every prophet, there were people who, they came for the welfare of humanity, but they were people willing to take their lives. So the fulfillment of that vision was that here was your son who was prepared for sacrifice. He didn't mind facing the challenges that would face him as he took on the brunt of leadership. In another place in the Quran, for example, we find another story, and that is in the story of Joseph. And there are two major incidents in the life of Joseph. There are quite others, but two major ones which show us how we can look at the Quran and take it from a different perspective. It is said that when Joseph's brothers came to where he was, the ruler, and he was distributing food in a time of famine, which was predicted by Joseph, they came, they didn't recognize him. But he wanted one of his brothers to remain with him, his younger brother. And it so happened that someone placed a drinking cup in the bag of the brother's saddle bag, or whatever it may have been. And simultaneously, the king's cup, the chalice or the king's cup was also missing. And so they thought that they should look for it, and because there was a reward, they went and they arrested all these brothers and said, look, we are missing the king's cup, and let's look for it. Those who were looking for it didn't know really what they were looking for. But they found this cup in the brother's saddlebag, and they took him into remand and let the others go. And the Quran says that was a plan of Allah in order to bring that brother under Joseph's care. But how do we know that there were two different cups? The Quran uses two different words. The cup that was placed in the bag of the brother of Joseph is called in the Quran Siqaya. Siqaya, which means an ordinary drinking cup. And the one which was missing, the king's cup, was called Suwa, Suwa al-Malk, the chalice or special cup, a goblet as it were. As you know, kings would have cups which would have jewels and precious things around it. They found just an ordinary drinking cup. But the people who were searching were more thinking of the reward, and they just arrested this individual thinking they will probably get the reward, and so they kept him. It was a way in which Joseph was able to keep his brother while his other brothers went back home and later on returned for more provisions. But the important thing here is that it's not the same word used in the Quran for cup. There are two different words used. In another case, we find that in the story of Joseph as well, it is said that Joseph, an attempt was made to seduce Joseph by the mistress of the house in which he was the head of the household in which he was staying as a young man. And a lot of stories have been, invented about Joseph's beauty and so on, and all the women fell for him and so on. The woman failed in her attempts to seduce Joseph. And when the women of the town, the Quran says so, when the women of the town heard, they felt that this woman, she doesn't know how to, to get such a young man. Let's try. We will have a method. We will make him fall for her. And so she invited them to come and try, see what you can do. When they came, it is said they gave each of them a knife. And people said they gave them some fruit, orange or whatever it is. And when Joseph came in and they saw he was so beautiful, they said they cut themselves, they dropped the knives, they just said, oh, what a wonderful person, and they all cut their hands. That is an impossibility. If someone comes to you and you are amazed, the first thing you do, and you have a knife in your hand, you'll drop the knife, not cut your hand. The fact of the cutting of their hand was a deliberate act. And in fact, the word ID, which means hands, in Arabic is used in the Quran, sometimes mean in front of you. ID him wa min khalfihim, in your hands as well as behind you, says the Quran in many places. So it is possible either they cut their hands deliberately or they tore their clothes. You use the knife to cut their clothing so that it would appear that Joseph attacked them. And so when Joseph went before the court, I think the women gave evidence and said Joseph attacked them, and that is why he was in prison. Now, Joseph spent some time in prison, and when he was about to be released, he refused. And he said, I would not leave here until my name is cleared. So reopen the case of the women who cut their hands. In fact, the case was known as that. It's mentioned in the Quran. The case of the women who cut their hands. The women did not amputate their hands, and so that case was reopened. And the women admitted that yes, this was a device, this was a scheme, this was a plot that they adopted in order to get Joseph in trouble because he refused their advances, and so his name was in fact cleared. The word used for cutting of the hands when with regards to the women is وَقَطَعْنَا أَيْدِيهِنَّ. That indicates that they deliberately cut their hands. It was not by accident or because Joseph was so beautiful. It also, as I said, can mean that they tore, because the word katahna in Arabic is used in the Quran to means to tear your bowels. Doesn't mean that you're cutting it, but you're drinking something and it rends your bowel. It gives you a lot of pain. So it can also mean to tear what is in front of you, as I've already said. Aidihim can means, aidihinna can means what is in front of them. So when the case was opened and Joseph was about to be freed, that case was known as kata'na aidihinna, says the Quran. The women who cut their hands, and it is called a scheme, a qaida, a plot or so. Now, the word kata'na in Arabic or kata means to separate. And it's used in the Quran in several ways. It means, as I said, boiling water if put in a person's stomach, it cuts their bowels. Doesn't mean that your bowels are actually cut out from you, but just that it damages it. Or it says, kutti'at, garments of fire. The Quran speaks metaphorically, they are cut out for you. They are designed for you. So the word kata has different meanings in the Quran. In one place it speaks about kata sabil, that is the cutting of the roadway, or cutting of the road. And it means here blocking the road, because it means you separate. People want to pass on the road and you put a block, you separate where they can reach from where they want to go. And it's sometimes applied to ambush or highway robbery is one of the ways it is translated in the Holy Quran. So when we look at these words, we will see that you have to look at the Quran carefully as to what it says and interpret and analyze it, not by the stories that we hear or the preconceived ideas that we have, but we have to look carefully as what the Quran is given, what message it is given. And so with regards to the verses that I've recited in Arabic, taken from chapter 19 of the Quran, Surah Maryam, it tells us that Mary had gone to an eastern place, and she was remote from her family and her people. She went to a remote place, the Quran says. And then she came back after she had a child. The Quran says she came, or she accompanied him to her community, transported him. Now there are many people who think because the Quran mentions the birth of Jesus Christ, and then it speaks about Mary coming, that she was coming with a child in her arms, or in a little bassinet or crib or manger or as I said, cradle. Now the word used for cradle in the Quran is mahad, and is used in several places in the Quran. The Quran calls the whole world, the whole earth as a cradle. Same word is used, mahad, and is translated as a resting place, a place where you rest. So the word mahad doesn't always mean a small little box in which you have a child. It can have several meanings. In one place it means in the Quran, it is used in a verbal form to mean that which is easy, because when you rest you are at ease. So that which is easy. So when we look at what the Quran is saying here, and it also says she brought him. Obviously Mary was not such a strong person that unless she had this cradle on wheels or something like that, she was wheeling him. Certainly it was not in her arms, because the Quran says that he was in a mahad, so the interpretation is he was therefore in a cradle, in a box, in a crib, whatever it may have been, in a manger, which is a trough that animals feed from. So, but it says she came with him, carrying him. Now the word carry is used in the Quran, and again when we look at the Quran, we'll see the word carry means transport, even to accompany a person. The Quran speaks about the believers when there was a battle with the Prophet Muhammad, and the same word is used. that they said, "Oh, Messenger of God, we don't have anything to transport us. We have no animals, we have no means of transport." And the same word hamal is used. But hamal means not only we have nothing to carry us, but nothing to transport us. And so Mary was not lifting this baby in her arms or carrying him in any basket or cradle or crib, as the case may be. So they said, they remarked. So when she came to her people, and they were, some of them were scholars, rabbis, and so on, they said, "Oh Mary, you are really here with something unique." Now what is this something unique? People tend to think, well, it must be the baby. And they know Mary was a virgin, as some people say. The Quran doesn't say that. They clearly knew Mary was married because the Quran does speak about the marriage of Mary, that she was put in charge of someone after Zachariah. She was put, they cast their pens to determine who will take charge of Mary when she left the temple. So the Quran is quite clear on that. So they couldn't think that this strange thing is that she became pregnant, that she was not married, or she was a wicked woman. All these aspersions are wrong, because the Quran says that Mary was a woman who guarded her chastity. She was a pious woman. And you can't make these statements about her, as some Muslims do, or even some non-Muslims do. So they remark, "You are really here with something unique." What was that unique thing? Was it the child, or was it the message? Because when Mary brought Jesus to her people, he was an adult, as we will see from these verses of the Quran. She was not carrying a baby. He himself said, "I am a messenger of Allah, and he has given me the book and made me a prophet." That is not a baby. A baby is not made into a prophet. Prophet Muhammad did not become a prophet when he was born. He became a prophet at 40 years of age. And the Quran describes 40 years of age as the age of maturity. So the Quran is pointing out to us that you have brought something unique. And remember, in the time of Jesus, there were already two prophets that were among the people. Zacharias, who looked after Mary, and John, who was also, it is alleged, a cousin of Jesus Christ. So they knew they were prophets. What difference was Jesus? Just another prophet? No. They went on to say, "O sister of Aaron, your father was not a troublesome person, nor was your mother immodest." I've used the word immodest here as the nearest word for the word bagi, because some people translate the word bagi as meaning a wicked woman. Your mother was not a wicked woman. The word bagi is normally translated in Arabic even as a prostitute or fornicatress or whatever. But it really means one who goes a little beyond. In other words, person who is forward. But the word forward doesn't really, it conveys in a particular sense what is meant. It means insolent. It means you're just coming forward and you're putting your views regardless of anyone else. You're gone beyond the bounds, actually. That is how it is used. In the Quran, the word bagi in Arabic actually has a meaning in a good sense and a bad sense. That if you do go beyond the bounds in order to achieve something good, the Quran uses the word ibtigha and speaks of seeking the pleasure of Allah, where the same word is used. But mostly it is used for going beyond bounds and doing that which is wrong and that which is evil. So they said, "Your father was not a troublesome person, why are you coming to bother us? And your mother was not so forward, she was not so presumptuous to come and, women were considered to be in those days perhaps to be just staying in the background. You are coming forward here and you are bringing this person with these arguments." Now the question will arise here, obviously, as the Quran says here, she directed them to him. Why didn't Mary speak up? Why didn't she say, "No, this is not so"? She didn't put any argument. She didn't say a word. She directed them to him. The reason was, the Quran says it just 2 or 3 verses before, she was speech fasting. She said, Allah told her that if you meet any person, you should indicate that this period of time I am not speaking to anyone. I'm not speaking. But when you look at the Quran from this context, you see that it is in consonance, it's not contradictions. So she could not speak because she had vowed and made a promise that she would not speak to anyone. And so she pointed to Jesus Christ. And then they uttered, "How can we converse with one who is still a youth in a crib?" And crib here is not literally but figuratively. That is, he's just a small child. I remember many years ago when the Ahmadiyya Anjuman was first started in Trinidad. In fact, we started in June of 9th of June 1975. And just in January 1976, we had a meeting here at the old mosque in this location. And in presenting the Ahmadiyya movement, there were some people who raised certain objections. And I was just about reached my 30th year, and people who were objecting to me and the formation of the Ahmadiyya movement used that remark. They said, Maulana, he's just a little boy, not even married yet, and even though I was married and had a child already. But they considered me, because of their age, to be a little boy who didn't warrant, doing what I was doing in carrying the message of Islam. It's a similar situation. When people feel that they are high and mighty and they look at younger people, they think them of children. They look at them as children. They are just a little brat. They are just a little child. So it doesn't mean that Jesus was a little baby. What it meant, he was much younger than them, and so they felt offended. They feel they can't converse and communicate with because of their arrogance with a younger person. So, but look carefully at the words of the Quran. What does the Quran say? It says, how could we really, how could we speak to one who is, if we take the literal meaning as other Muslims do, how could we talk to somebody who is still a baby in the crib, a baby in the cradle or whatever? Why can't you talk to a baby in the crib? The moment a child born, you can talk to them. In fact, we recite the azan and the iqamah, you can talk to them. The Quran is not saying here, how does a baby talk to us? The Quran is not saying here, how could a little baby talk to us? It is saying, how could we talk to a baby? And so this is where, as I said, we have to look carefully at the way in which the Quran puts its words. So, how can we converse with a person who is still young in a crib, that he's just a small fry, just a small boy? Because anyone could speak to a child. The Quran does not say how could a baby speak to us. If the Quran has said so and then the baby spoke, that would be a miracle. But no indication is given to the Quran about to the age of that baby, whether it was a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 40 years, 30 years. We make a guess and say that because one thing happens after the other. The moment Mary had a baby and then she appeared to her people, that obviously no time period or very small time period passed. The Quran doesn't say so. It doesn't give us an indication as to the age of the child. So the fact that he told them that he is a prophet means he was already an adult. The next few verses of the Quran after this said that I am the servant of Allah. He has given me a book and made me a prophet. And so it is quite obvious that at the time Mary went to her people, and she carried this baby, she carried this child, he was not a little baby in her arms, but he was an adult. But what was the reason that this startled these people so much? Because Jesus came with a more important message than the other two prophets that were there. Zacharias was there, John was there, known as John the Baptist. But Jesus came with a special message, and what was that? The Quran tells us this. He was the Messiah that he expected. The Quran says when Mary was given information about the birth of a child, it said he will be the Messiah, son of Mary. So she said, this is a prophecy. This Messiah, son of Mary, this is the Messiah. And it's important to note that the Messiah was a descendant of David. A descendant of David. Now, Mary was not a descendant of David. She was a descendant of Aaron. She was of the priestly class. David represented the kingly class. And obviously, therefore, for Jesus to have been a descendant of David, he had to have a father. And it has been established that his father was a descendant of David. In fact, it is said in the New Testament that they went to Bethlehem because a census was taken, that all who were the descendants of David should be registered, a census was taken. So that is why she was referred to, Ya Ukht Harun, O woman of the priestly class. You are bringing somebody as the Messiah, and you are from the priestly class, and that is your child. Where is the father? The Quran doesn't say here that his father was present or not. if his father may have died at that particular point in time. What is important, she came from a remote place, and then when she came here, they were more concerned not about the message, but about the lineage, as it were. So because Jesus came with that most important message, he was the Messiah that they expected, they were not prepared for that. And so opposition started against him. And so it is important for us to, when we analyze these verses of the Quran, just as an example, and there are many more examples, we will see that even when you read the Quran in English or in any translated language, if it's translated properly, you will find that there is so much information you can obtain. There's not contradiction. If you look a little more closely at Arabic words, you'll get a better understanding, no doubt. But even without knowledge of the Arabic language, the way it has been translated and the words that are used are such that we can make sure that there should be a careful reading of the Quran and a careful thinking. That is what is essential as we study the Holy Quran, as we read it, and as we explain it. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quran al-Azim. ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم إنه تعالى جواد كريم ملك بر رؤوف رحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا منهم. اللهم اخذل من خذل دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا منهم. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أعلى أكبر.